All right, we want to welcome back all of our listeners from the Crown Council to our resource partner podcast series. Today, we are so happy to have Jacquelyn joining us from SolutionReach. Jacquelyn has just been such an awesome resource partner, and everyone got to know Jacquelyn at the Crown Council annual event at Check-In this last year in Nashville. Today, we are going to go in depth with Jacquelyn on SolutionReach, their offerings, their services, and how they benefit our members of the Crown Council. Jacquelyn, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Spencer. I'm excited to talk a little bit more about patient communication, as always.
Yeah.
So, are you ready for me to get started?
Yeah, talk to us about this beautiful picture you have on deck here.
Okay, so these are my two daughters, and before COVID hit, my youngest daughter graduated from Brigham Young University. And I have to tell you, that was kind of a proud moment in my life as a mom, right? But she got her first real job. She had her first real insurance and on her own, and it was kind of a moment to remember. But one day after this day, she came to me because she was off and running in her new job, and she just said, "Mom, I think I have this rash on my face, and I need to find a dermatologist." So she said, "How do I know which dermatologist is on my insurance?" So I explained a little bit to her about preferred providers, and she said, "Okay, got it." And she went off on her way, and I didn't hear from her again for a couple weeks. Well, a couple weeks later, she came back to me and she just said, "Mom, I just came from my new dermatologist." And she said, "It was the absolute best experience." And I said, "Really? So tell me about it." And she said, "Honestly, I went to Google. I did a search for a dermatologist around me, and I found one that I thought seemed like a good fit. I read his reviews. Everything looked so great. And then I thought, how do I know if he's on my insurance?" But she said right there on his Google page, he had an online scheduler. So I thought, well, I'm going to click on that and just see if there's an opportunity for me to schedule an appointment. And within that scheduler, it actually listed the insurances he worked with. So that made it easy for her, right? And so she filled out all of the information. She said she was able to choose a day and a time that worked best for her. She said, as soon as I submitted everything, I received a confirmation by the next day that everything had been booked. I started receiving emails and texts welcoming me to the practice. She said, the day after that, I received a confirmation text that I could just reply the word yes to, so I could confirm my appointment. And she said, and then the day before my appointment, I received a text that included a link for me to fill out all of my health history and all of that before I ever even went into the practice. And she said, literally, the best part of this whole experience, Mom, was that I hadn't spoken to anyone before I actually had to show up for my appointment. And she thought that was the best thing ever. And I thought about this, my sweet millennial daughter, right? Who that's kind of what these young adults want in life is, this digital communication. And I thought about how fortunate she was truly to find a care provider who understood the meaning of digital patient communication. And she was more confident with this care provider. She was ecstatic that he was up to date with all the digital technology that needed to happen for her to be able to schedule that so quickly. Have you experienced anything like this in your life yet, Spencer?
Yes, man, and frankly, Jacquelyn, today, any new resource partner that we talk to today, it sounds like the question is this: how can we accommodate the millennials that are looking for healthcare services, etc. Right?
Yeah.
So completely agree with this, especially and having young kids as well. understand it. Yeah.
For sure. And, this happened all before COVID hit. So although 2020 is not anything that any of us would have planned or imagined or wished for, right? I think it has forced us even stronger to collaborate and to innovate in unpredictable ways that we probably never thought. And we at SolutionReach are driven by what our clients want and need. And then these dental professionals are driven by what their patients want and need. So we at SolutionReach have worked really hard to create a stronger virtual care environment than ever before, even since COVID. And you kind of may ask the question, what is virtual care? Well, basically it's just this. It's all the digital communication touch points in various forms designed to get your patient the optimal care for optimal health. And I think that's one thing SolutionReach has been preparing for a very long time, since we sent our very first text confirmation, right? That was the very beginning, and that was in the year 2000. So we've been preparing for this for a very long time. So just out of curiosity, does your dentist offer digital communication, Spencer?
Actually could use some help in digital communication. The only type of digital communication I see is confirming an appointment,
Okay.
period. But I understand there's so much more, especially in today's day where it's, unfortunately, but like even by the time you've paid for something, you haven't even seen anyone face to face anymore.
I
So,
know that a crazy thing. I know that's exactly how it is. So I just have some questions I'm going to ask here, and maybe these practices can think about these questions. And if they answer yes to any of these, then it might be time for them to rethink some things in their practice, right? So what about, have you experienced any of the following challenges? These are the questions. Less appointment slots to make time for COVID sanitation protocols. That's been a big thing, right? They can't get as many people in a given day. Communication difficulties. Are you experiencing a high volume of incoming and outgoing phone calls? What about communication around prescribed treatment plans or missed appointments? I think those are two key pieces that these practices really need when it comes to an automated digital option. Are these practices slow to adopt digital communication, such as two-way texting, digital intake forms, digital bill pay, which is, I think, a huge piece of the puzzle anymore. People don't want to hand their credit card in anymore. And the inability to support online scheduling. I think that's kind of another one that's kind of a big deal anymore. And have you experienced patient fears around catching COVID in the practice, right? So they're fearful. So the more you can offer all of these digital touch points, then it's going to create a sense of calmness with the patient, right?
yeah.
So if you said yes to any of these questions, then it might be time to look at a new solution in your practice. And we're just going to start with the simplicity of two-way texting. Let's talk about two-way texting. And these are just some statistics that I found. It takes 2 minutes, this is just on average, to conduct a phone conversation. It takes just 4 seconds to send a text message. And it doesn't seem like a very big deal when you're thinking, 2 minutes isn't a big deal. But what do you think the average number of phone calls a practice receives on a daily basis?
Oh man, I mean it's over 100.
Well, it's average. The average is 50. So I'm sure that's taking in great big practices to really small little practices and just finding an average number. But even if you were conservative in that number at 50, and times that 2 minutes, that's still a chunk of time that the practice is having to talk to patients every day. And not to mention that being put on hold and being tied to a phone while details are worked out, all of that is becoming more and more old school all the time, because people really would prefer texting into their practice. 76% of people believe that texting is more convenient than a phone call. I think any more people look at it as it's an intrusion of their time, kind of. And then 19% of people don't even check their voicemail, and that's ever. So my other daughter that was in that initial photo, I was trying to call her one day and she didn't pick up. So I left a voicemail, and probably within 5 minutes, she's like, texting me saying, why are you calling me? You know that if you want to get a hold of me, you need to text me, Mom. I don't even check my voice. I don't even listen to my voicemails. And I was like, but I'm your mother. You think you would at least listen to my message, right? But I thought, can you imagine what the statistics are on that when the dentist is calling, or, compared to even your mother or a family member or something, right? So then you look at texting has a 209% higher response rate than phone calls. Mm-hmm. So that's huge, right? If you want to get a response, then just start texting and giving your patients the option to be able to text you. Some best practices for texting. One is to use the current office number create that number make it as a textable line, which we can do. Track message history. Create two-way text initiation so that the patient can actually initiate the text. Honestly, right now I'm thinking about switching my dentist because they can text me and I can respond, but I can't start a text with them. And I'm like, and maybe I just know too much, but maybe, why not have it optional for a patient if they prefer to text into the practice, if they have a question, if their child breaks a tooth and you want to snap a photo of the tooth and send it in, those are things that are huge that can really be beneficial to not only the patient, but the practice as well. Flag priority messages, make sure they're HIPAA compliant, and then all the automation that can happen with texting. One thing that we just barely launched, and it's actually this new website widget that can become part of the two-way texting feature. It's just this little widget at the bottom of the website, and you can make this widget look like how you want. You can customize it to match your website. You can, when you scroll over it, it can have some words that say, do you have a question? Click here, or whatever you want it to be. This is for like prospective patients or current patients who just want to ask a question. Do you do whitening, or do you, whatever the questions may be, you can communicate. And all of this will funnel into the conversations feature for the front desk. So it makes it really simple for them, and they will be able to know if it's a question coming from the website or if it's a question coming through just a normal patient. If it's a patient of record, it'll have the patient's name because it's all integrated. But if it's a new prospect, then it will show that it's coming from the website widget. So I just kind of wanted to show that a little bit. Yeah. Let's talk about unscheduled prescribed treatment. Also, missed appointment messages. Have you ever received, have you ever missed an appointment, first of all?
Yes.
Put you on the spot, Spencer. Yep. Sorry.
I'm happy to admit it.
So I think sometimes this just makes it so much easier for patients if something came up last minute. And honestly, people just forget. Everybody's busy, right? So it's important to have these, not just to mention all of the weekly, daily, hourly reminders, but also this missed appointment reminder that's on the right. And on the left is the unscheduled prescribed treatment reminder, which honestly, I think it's so awesome. If you have a treatment that you've prescribed for a patient, you can just go in next to their name and schedule a reminder to go out in a couple of days, just to remind them that they have been prescribed this treatment. We'd highly recommend it. And the odds will go up tremendously for that patient if you do a quick little follow-up than just let it go by the wayside waiting for them to call back in, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's important. Also, one thing that's kind of cool on the rescheduling, the missed appointment, is if they're using an online scheduler, it will give them a link to click right on that link and it will take them to that online scheduler. So the patient can actually schedule that themselves without the front desk even having to talk to the patient. So while we're here, let's talk about online scheduling. It takes on average, just to schedule an appointment over the phone, on average of 8 minutes, which this 8 minutes is 8 minutes you could be using to build a relationship with people. You could use that 8 minutes to, if you need to sanitize between patients, right? You could use that. It's just such an easy, like 8 minutes is just a chunk of time where you're trying to get correct spelling, or let's look at the day and time and what's going to fit and what's going to work for you. There's just so much of that's why it takes like a longer amount of time for a scheduling situation over the phone. So one thing too to think about is primetime shopping. Literally, the studies show starts at 8 o'clock at night while people are in bed. And I can pretty much promise you that my daughter probably scheduled her appointment with that dermatologist late at night when she was just thinking about it and she wasn't at work and she could take a minute and look at her schedule. And so it would be nice to offer, for you not to miss out on appointments, because this is when patients have time to look at their schedule and to schedule their appointments. The other cool thing about this feature is we have a recall messaging that goes out that's automated. We have a very strong recall feature that will remind patients when they're due for their hygiene. These are people who have kind of slipped through the cracks and didn't pre-appoint their hygiene exam. It will include the link to the online scheduler if the practice is using it, so they can still get that scheduled on their own time. And it just makes a huge difference.
That's great.
Yeah, so let's jump over to reminders. So a reminder is not just a reminder anymore. It's a pre-visit instruction, which means patients can now come prepared, knowing what to expect. This includes changes in the practice around COVID protocols, like texting the practice when they arrive to the parking lot, or if a patient needs to be pre-medicated around a certain appointment type, or maybe you need a patient to arrive 15 minutes early, or whatever information that you need for them to know. It can go out with one or more of their reminder messages, their weekly, their daily, or their hourly. And another thing that we just barely launched, and this has been huge with this whole virtual patient experience, is these practices can now include their digital intake forms in these pre-visit instructions. So it can include, for new patients, you can create a group of new patient appointments to get all the new patient packet. It can include a COVID pre-screening packet to go out either the morning of their appointment. They can fill all that out so you know all of that information before they even came in, and then you can just take their temperature. It just includes everything that they would need. And since COVID hit, our number of intake packets has increased more than 12 times, as well as, I'm just going to jump over to the intake packet. And then our clients' patient completion rates have more than doubled. So something to think about when you're sending pre-visit intake, digital intake forms is patients are going to be a lot more likely to show up if they've already taken the time to pre-fill all of that out. So this has reduced no-shows and cancellations tremendously. One office suggested that it's saving them now between 30 minutes and an hour a day to automate this. So it's been a huge plus for our clients. And I love this. Like, I don't want to be handed a clipboard when I go into my dentist, or, even, I feel like even an iPad that you're trying to sanitize between can be a little bit cumbersome. So I think this is this is probably our most popular feature right now. One of our biggest headaches, and we know practices have this, is payment, trying to collect payment. We need to flip this on its head and put payment front and center where possible. Do you pay most of your bills online, Spencer?
Oh yeah, completely. It's easiest and fastest, and there's record of it doing so when you do it. So yes.
I know, I love it. So are you able to pay your dentist online?
No, come to think of that,
I
I
know.
get a bill in the mail and then generally send in a credit card number on it or call in with the credit card.
Yes, yes. So 56% of bills in America are paid online currently, and I would bet that number has gone up since COVID. This number was pulled probably right before COVID. But by allowing patients the option to text to pay, you can increase payments by 25% because patients are so willing to do this. Not only that, think about the downstream effects. On average, offices a lot of times only collect 60% of what is 90 days past due because they don't have time to sit and deal with all those little $10 charges that maybe the insurance didn't cover, or their goal on a daily basis is to keep the schedule full, right? So it gets kind of put on the back burner a little bit. I know I kept receiving the same invoice over and over and over from my dentist, and I'm exactly like you. I didn't really have time to call in and give them the credit card. I didn't really want to write down my credit card number to put it through the mail. And I just thought they're just going to have to wait till I go in probably in 6 months for my
Yep.
hygiene, which I'm sure was not optimal to them.
Yeah.
They probably would rather just collect it. So with SR Pay, you can generate reports of patients that are overdue and start collecting these payments almost immediately. And it is so simple. It is so simple. And this is through our two-way texting feature. It's just a matter of sending them the dollar amount that they owe, and then they can fill out their credit card information and submit it back to the practice.
Hmm.
I spoke to an office manager recently who explained that they literally have thrived through COVID because they started using this two-way text option, and they spent a lot of their time just catching up and collecting on these smaller amounts. So they've been, they're all up to date. They've got their books up to date, and I love that.
Hmm.
So all of these features we've talked a little bit about today increase patient satisfaction. They reduce patients' anxiety, and this is a way to establish and grow trust with the patients. Strong relationships allow patients to feel trust and are more willing to accept your treatment plans. Prepay for treatment. I know since COVID, a lot of offices that use our text to pay option, when patients pull in, they text that they're in the parking lot. They send them the text for their copay right then and there. So they've paid before they've even walked in the door. And then they just can tell them when they're ready and sanitized for them to come in. These patients are going to be more willing to share their positive experience online. They're going to be more willing to refer their friends and family. And honestly, they're going to be so loyal to you as a patient, which is what you want, right? As a care provider, you want these loyal patients.
Mm-hmm.
So trust is your greatest asset. And I don't know about you, Spencer, but the more I've thought about Courtney's experience, the more I've come to the conclusion that although we are not all millennials, and we are mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers, we are business owners,
Mm-hmm.
we're engineers and public administrators, we all live busy lives. And you dentists, the dentists out there are not necessarily competing against each other. They're competing with busy lives.
Yeah.
And why not make the patient experience as seamless as possible and bring in revenue at the same time? And I personally want to be able to text my care provider. I've told you this. I want to schedule my appointment online. I don't want to be handed a clipboard, and I really don't want to receive an invoice in the mail. So I would think, and I'm not a millennial, I'm, a grandmother. So I would think that there's a lot more patients out there that want this. And I feel like if you're a provider that would like to offer these digital tools, then check into it, because taking that first step is kind of the first step. And I know that this patient provider experience exists because we offer all of these tools here at SolutionReach, right?
Yeah.
So you may already have a digital communication tool that you're using in your practice. And if you just want to compare apples to apples, if you would like to know more about creating a better patient experience, we would love to hear from you. And you could just text the keyword trust to 66866 to take advantage of our Crown Council offer. And it's really just 15 minutes of your time, and we'll throw in a $50 Amazon gift card. And I look forward to hearing from these practices, Spencer.
Yeah. What a great offer, Jacquelyn. That's so nice and very cool. And
Well,
great presentation as well.
oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate you joining me today. I know this took time out of your busy life too, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, this is fantastic and great presentation. And for any of the members that would like more information, you can see Jacquelyn's contact information on our Crown Council website under the Resource Partners tab, or you can reach out to me, and this video will be available as well on the website. So Jacquelyn, thank you so much for your time today, and to look forward to hearing from you soon.
Perfect. Thank you, Spencer. I appreciate your time as well.